The war started with the invasion of Poland, but it was not only due to the territorial claims that Hitler had on Poland, but as part of a long-term plan. Hitler considered the capitalist countries as his enemies, but also the communist Russia. To get ready for the future war against Russia and to assure a very fast victory on France and Britain, Germany needed resources. Germany needed steel from Norway and the control of the North Sea. So, after the fast invasion and occupation of Poland, just over a month, Germany attacked Denmark and Norway. Denmark was defeated in less than a month, and Norway in 63 days. These fast invasions and defeating of countries was called Blitzkrieg, that means lightning war, and it finished with the invasion and fast defeat of France and the Low Countries. France and the Low Countries were conquered in 1 month, and the Germans occupied the north of France and the Atlantic coast. Rest of France was given a certain independence, but actually it was under the control of Germany. This part of France was called the Vichy France, after the capital city where the French government by General Pétain was established. Britain was left alone against the powerful German army. In June 1940, the Battle of Britain started. A German invasion of the islands was not possible because the British Air Force resisted the German Air Force. The invention of the radar technology was capital to detect the German planes before arriving to British soil and thus letting the British fighters take off to face them. Italy, the ally of Germany, started war in other fronts. The Italian army tried to conquer the north of Africa and the Suez Canal in order to block communication between Britain and its colonies. But British troops resisted, and Germany had to send troops to help Italians. Italy also invaded Greece and was again defeated, so Germany sent troops to finally invade the country. When Europe was completely conquered, except Britain, Hitler started the invasion of the USSR in order to get important resources for the war: oil from the Caucasus and cereals from the Ukraine region. It was the summer of 1941. The Blitzkrieg was successful again, and German troops advanced very fast into Russian soil. But the winter came, and the large territory the Germans should master stopped the invasion. The freezing weather and the lack of petrol made the advance impossible. While Germany was fighting the European war, Japan, the ally of Germany, invaded southern Asia and conquered British and French colonies. In December 1941, Japan attacked the American military base of the Pacific Ocean, Pearl Harbor, in Hawaii Archipelago. As a result, the United States joined the war on the British, French and Russian side against Japan, Italy and Germany. History repeats itself. 1942, with the entrance of the United States in the war, was the turning point for the World War II. Then the Allies began a series of decisive offensives: Battle of Midway, the Battle of El Alamein, and the Battle of Stalingrad. The Battle of Midway took place between the 4th and 7th of June 1942, near the island of Midway. The United States Navy defeated the Imperial Japanese Navy and was considered the turning point of the Pacific War. After the battle, the importance of air superiority was proved. The Japanese Navy lost its 4 main aircraft carriers and were forced to return home. Without any form of air superiority, the Japanese never again launched a major offensive in the Pacific. The Battle of El Alamein took place between the 23rd October and the 11th of November 1942 in Egypt. The Allied victory prevented the Axis conquest of Egypt, the Suez Canal and the Middle Eastern and Persian oil fields. The Axis army was defeated by the British army and the superiority of Allied material. And the Battle of Stalingrad was a long one that took place between the 17th July 1942 and the 2nd February 1943. It was fought in the industrial city of Stalingrad and stopped the German advance into the Soviet Union. The Germans tried to occupy the city to cut Soviet transport links with southern Russia and to drive into the oil fields of the Caucasus. At the same time, Hitler wanted personal propaganda by seizing the city that bore the name of Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin. Stalingrad. The effects of these battles meant that by 1943 the Axis powers were retreating on all fronts: Russia, Southern Europe, and the Pacific. In Russia, after Stalingrad, the Battle of Kursk in August 1943 was the largest tank battle in history. 6,000 tanks, 4,000 aircrafts, and 2 million troops were involved. The German army was defeated and its offensive capability stopped. In Southern Europe, after defeating the German and Italian armies in North Africa, the Allies invaded Italy. The king Vittorio Emanuele deposed Mussolini and the dictator was executed by the Italian people. Anyway, the German troops resisted and tried to block the Allied advance towards the north. In the Pacific, the Allied force won an important battle against the Japanese fleet, the Battle of Guadalcanal. After this battle, the Allies started conquering islands and establishing military bases on them in order to attack the next ones. Establish new military bases to attack next one. It was a strategy designed by United States General MacArthur, called leapfrogging. Since the beginning of the invasion of Russia, Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, asked the Allies to start an offensive on the Western Front, to create a second front for the Germans. But the Allies didn't start this front until 1943. By this time, the advance of the Soviet army meant an expansion of the Soviet Union, and the Allies resolved then the invasion of France. In June 1944, the Allies launched the Operation Overlord, the Normandy landings. The main objective was to invade and occupy France, and reach Germany before the Soviets. The Allies advanced towards Germany, while bombing German cities trying to make civilians revolt against Hitler. The Germans tried to resist and launched an offensive in the Battle of the Ardennes in December 1944, but it was unsuccessful. The Allied forces reached Germany and the Soviets occupied Berlin in April. On 1st May 1945, the Reichstag, the German parliament, was taken. Hitler committed suicide and Germany surrendered. However, the war went on for 3 months in the Pacific. Japanese forces and civil population were resolved to resist and kill so many enemies as they could. This Japanese policy would cost many lives of American soldiers, and at the same time the Russian influence was growing within the region. As a result of this, the president resolved to drop the new atomic bomb. 2 atomic bombs were dropped on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to finish the war. The massive destruction caused by the atomic bombs had a double effect: the surrender of Japan, first objective, and a warning for the Soviet Union, second objective. World War II ended with the Japanese unconditional surrender, signed on 2nd September 1945 on board the USS Missouri. The economic consequences were not only destruction and ruin. Actually, they were positive for the United States. United States was the main producer of weapons and supplies for the Allies, so that meant its industry developed a lot. A new international organ was created to prevent future worldwide crises. It was the International Monetary Fund. At the same time, due to the need to rebuild Europe, it was created the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The traditional European political primacy was over, and it was replaced by the United States and the USSR. World was divided into two areas of influence. One led by the United States and the other one led by the Communist Russia, the USSR. Europe was also divided into these two areas of influence, and its direct consequence was the establishing of democracies and capitalist systems under the leadership of the United States on one side, and communist dictatorships under the leadership of the USSR on the other side. Moral consequences affected everywhere. Soldiers and civilians who survived the war and witnessed so many examples of suffering and cruelty had to manage psychological traumas. During the war, not only soldiers suffered violence, but also civilians too. Nazi concentration camps killed millions of human beings. Allied bombings on German cities were aimed at civilians and killed thousands of them. The Japanese army committed massacres and tortures, and the United States atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki wiped out the entire cities, and thus horrified the whole world. A new concept was created: crimes against humanity. And this is the end of Unit 7, one of the most horrible units. The world we are living in is a direct consequence of the results of this Second World War.